Hey there friends, Dave Paulides, Canada Missing Project, a copyrighted edition for our video channel. And this is Huck TV. Yeah, Huck is with us in studio today. She says, yeah Dad, I want to come in and be part of the show. So I said, okay. And here you go. She says hi. Shake hands. Oh yeah, it's a good girl. Yeah, it's a good girl. We're buddies, huh? Yeah, we're buddies. Okay, so Huck said hi. Let's get on to the missing persons segment of this show. And that's what this is about. Missing people. Missing 411. So in this segment, we are going to talk about some letters that came in, and then we're going to talk about some missing people and their associated cases. So, first thing I want to talk to you about is something new that has come out, and I talked about it on my news segment the other day, but this is pretty important, and it's a new safety device. I talked to you about T-Mobile and what they're offering out there in the woods. Well, this is maybe as good or better. iPhone jumped on the bandwagon, and they're going to offer an emergency satellite texting option where you can call for emergency services by text on an iPhone. That's unbelievable. Don't have to spend $200-300 on a PLB. It's going to be right on your phone. And it's going to work off the satellite, not working off cell towers, so it will work. iPhone 14 and newer. Keep it in mind, and you might want to look at it. Missing people. I've had a lot of questions in the last 3 or 4 months. Hey Dave, what's the rate of missing people these days? Have they increased? Have they decreased? Honestly, I think they've decreased a lot. There's been a few this summer, but not many. A lot of you ask if I'll jump on a case and kind of follow it and see what's going on with it. I don't like to do that. As a case evolves, you learn a lot about it. And the vast majority of the missing people cases are not related to our work. So I like to let it evolve out and understand the circumstances. As more people release information on different issues, tend to learn more and more and more. And then you can talk about it from an educated standpoint. But here in the Flathead Valley, we're in northern Montana, they just came out with some statistics, and the visitors to Glacier National Park this summer was down somewhere around 3%, which was a lot of people. And wasn't really an explanation for it. But I don't think you need to be a brain surgeon to figure out that 8.5% inflation, $1 a gallon more for gas. It's hard for every family to get out, have fun, go to those national parks that are in those faraway places. I get that. So, what can you say? Haven't seen the other numbers from other national parks yet. But, here you go with the first letter. Hey Dave, I just finished watching your latest video. And first, please keep it up. Part of the paranormal research is historical research about a particular building, site, nearby areas, etc. Those facts, historical events, provide potentially highly important information, like how much electricity is pumped through nearby power lines or a bloody historical battle area, etc. Of course, you already know this. Second, ignore the naysayers. They're blatantly mean, hostile, selfish, and whatever else they may be. There's little accomplished with trying to reason with them. Such behavior is likely an indicator that they are very unhappy with their lives. There's some nasty people out there who spread psychic excrement on anyone they encounter. Yeah, there are. And I do want to say something else. I'm happy to communicate with people, anyone, by email. But we've had some serious implications when in the past, trying to be a good person, talk to them by phone. That ended up in stalking and some serious problems. So unless there's something really unusual, we don't call anybody. We deal with emails. Unless it's referred to by somebody that we know, no, we don't call anybody. And it's more of a safety concern than anything else. Some people become attached to you and start stalking you, and it's bad. So better off just keeping it light and keeping it via text or via email, rather. On with the letter. Finally, a quick paranormal event that happened to my wife, Stephanie. Stephanie and I were very close to my cousin, Kim. I grew up with her brother, James, and Kim as if we were all brothers and sisters, very close. Stephanie and I became very close with Kim and would have dinners together over the years. Kim's grown adult daughter, Savannah, had terrible diabetes and took her own life completely unexpected. Of course, Kim became very depressed and resorted to drinking. Over the course of a few years, she sort of gave up on life and was in and out of the hospital for pneumonia and a few other medical issues. One day she went into the hospital, never came home, she died. My aunt and uncle asked me to speak at her service, to perform her life story, her eulogy, and I was very honored. The night before her service, I was up very late writing her eulogy and had trouble sleeping. The next morning, I was trying to get every last ounce of sleep that I could while Steffi was making breakfast for the kids. They were loud and kept waking me. Then I heard what sounded like the sound of what happens when you put a Tupperware dish in a microwave and you didn't loosen the lid. Steam builds up and pops the lid off loudly. That was a whoosh, and then a sound pop like a Tupperware explosion in a microwave. Steffi called Chai, "Come here quickly." I asked what had happened. As I scrambled out of bed, ran into the kitchen, she was in a state of shock and answered, "I don't know, I'm not sure." Looking at the microwave, expecting some kind of food to have exploded all over the inside, I saw nothing inside. I told her what I thought happened. I told her what I thought it sounded like, and then asked her to tell me what happened. The kids in the living room had heard it also. She described making breakfast at the stove in front of her, with the sink to her right. She was in the corner where those two areas of the kitchen met, in the corner where she keeps a rotating spice area. She describes a sparkling light, kind of like the July 4th sparklers the kids carry. That's what made the whooshing sound. Gold and white light, a shower of non-heated sparkling lights. And then it vanished, the popping noise. No damage at all. It was just a visual appearance. But there had been something, an energy to the event. Nothing like that has ever happened in our house before. It's the house I grew up in, before or since. And it happened in the morning before I would deliver my cousin Kim's eulogy at her service. She had been cremated, so there was no casket, and it was held in her favorite winery, as she would have loved. I wish I could have seen or experienced this event, but at least I heard it with my own ears, as did our kids. My assessment is that the timing is key to the meaning of the event. Because of this, I think that it is possible and likely that this was some kind of message from Kim. What she was trying to tell us, I can't be sure, but I do think it was related to her passing and my telling of her life story to occur later that morning at the winery. So for what it's worth, there's my paranormal encounter related to a suicide and a death of a broken heart from me, my friend. God bless you and your family, including Ben. Thank you for all of your hard work, your integrity, and your championing of getting the facts to the public. These are dark days and the world needs every single candle to cast away the shadows. You, Dave, are one of the brightest candles. That was very kind of you. Thank you. A couple things about that. I think we generally, as a society, think of a sparkler as something fun, something pretty, something unique. Yeah. Well, in my humble opinion, that sparkling event wasn't meant for Chai. It was meant for the wife. And the sound was for everybody. But how unusual. What a pretty thing to see. That's all I could really say about it. But I don't think it was meant for Chai. Hi, Dave. I really like that our village channel is a safe, friendly place to discuss these occurrences. where so many people had and are having problems. I'm very private, but feel more comfortable as time goes on. Thanks for that. So, when the village was established, one of the things I told myself, there was going to be no abusive language. Anyone that was going to be abusive, anyone that was going to be challenging to a rude extent to somebody else, politely challenging, questioning, no, that's all normal. But any kind of rudeness, calling people names, you're out. That's it, you're out. And some people have said, oh, you're a dictator and you're not allowing free speech. Well, yeah, okay, call me what you want. But there's too many trolls out there. There's too much negative energy. The world I want to live in is positive. The world I want to live in is real. And the world I want to live in is helpful to others. Hey, what are you doing? Dog. Hey, Dave. I'm from Pennsylvania. I live in Florida now. When I was 3, my family lived near Waymart, Pennsylvania. My parents were caretakers of a Boy Scout camp. At the time, it was called Camp with the Wind. My brother was 16 at the time. He and my father and a state trooper were standing by a lake named Lake Ladore, Ladore, about 80 miles north of Allentown. They were talking. I was with my mother at the lodge. I remember it was winter. My father and brother and the trooper had seen what I remember what they called brilliant colors come over the lake. Then these colors flew off at a high speed. The trooper actually called the sighting in and was told it was seen over Syracuse, New York, minutes later. My brother wouldn't talk about it later on, but would acknowledge it. I could never find a record of the call. I don't have exact dates. It would have been in '66, but I remember going down to the lake with my mom and seeing the officer and brother and my dad in quite a state. We moved when I was 4 to Pike County, Pennsylvania. It was heavily wooded at the time. Our yard abutted the state game lands, which was really dense woods. It was my playground. I had a grand adventure one day with the neighbor's dog. I was 4 or 5 and took off into the woods with the dog and a homemade bow and arrow that didn't work. It must have been gone a long time because when we came out of the woods, up the road from our house into the neighbor's yard, my parents were there with the car. And they and the neighbors had been looking for me. As I write this, I realize I had no way of knowing where I was then. So, you want to sneeze again all over everything? So to come out of the woods into the yard of the house, not very close to mine, where my parents were, is very strange. I'd never thought of it before. I wonder now if I was brought to them. I'd never wandered off before, so was left to myself a lot. At least I thought I was. My parents were great. I was well looked after. There was something fantastical that happened to me that day. Not scary, but exciting. I wanted to show my parents what I'd seen. Even that day, and as I grew up, there was always something I couldn't remember from that day. I can still picture a mound of dirt or a small hill with someone large standing on it, looking down at me. I can still remember strange clothes and headgear on the man. But I always knew something else happened that wasn't wonderful, but I couldn't remember, even then. My parents and I could never find this hill. I looked many times. Later on, I couldn't understand how I could feel such an epic thing could have happened, but couldn't remember what. It has always been a personal adventure highlight in my life, all through childhood and on. I wish I wasn't forgetting some of the feelings on that day, but I am. I feel maybe I'd gone somewhere with this man, maybe a ride on a ship. I've always wondered. I have a ton more experiences, but this is one of the nearest and dearest. My memory has really been affected by experiences with the Bigfoot people and all other entities in the last few years. The person didn't sign the letter. I don't know who they are. I don't have a contact for this, but I would recommend that hypnotherapists be used and try to figure out what happened. And there's a lot of them around the U.S. You just got to look them up. Next letter. Hope this email finds you well. I live in Nevada, and back in 2011, an older gentleman by the name of Patrick Carnes went missing at the 205 exit off of I-80 in Nevada. Mr. Carnes was traveling with his dog Lucky. I never thought of this as a 411 case, but it's very strange. He was traveling west towards Reno after visiting family out of state. His car was abandoned on the east side of the freeway. at a desolate exit in the middle of nowhere. There have been a few strange disappearances at this exit. There's actually a serial killer working the freeways east of Reno. Public knowledge. Like I said, I never thought of it as a missing 411 case. That is until I heard you talk about the young lady who went missing and was found in a pond after leaving a train in Nevada. I believe this wasn't far from where Patrick disappeared. You also talked about a guy that went missing in Wells, Nevada after leaving a train. Well, Patrick was pulled over in Wells the night of his disappearance for failure to change lanes while passing an emergency vehicle on the shoulder. He was given a warning and sent on his way. He told the Nevada Highway Patrol officer he would never drive at night again. It was all caught on a dash cam. It was very surreal. The sheriff at the time said he believed Patrick may have been picked up by a trucker. I don't believe that, as he was so close to home after a very long cross-country trip. I think about Mr. Carnes often as I pass this exit every 3 months on my way to California. I have talked to one of the search and rescue people who helped look for Mr. Carnes, and he believes that he may have found a shirt that belonged to him out in the desert, but wasn't proven to be his. I'm trying to keep this brief, and I've left out quite a bit of info. There is a lot of info on the case online, and those who want to look them up. Every time I pass this exit, I ask out loud for God or Mr. Carnes himself to guide him. If it is a daylight, then I pass. I usually drive a few miles out into the desert and look around. If this is night, I try to get past that exit as fast as possible. My flight and fight sense is on full alert. Thank you for taking time to read this. A couple things. A search and rescue person or a sheriff who says that he believes that somebody was picked up probably has pretty good reason to say that, and maybe he's not letting everything out that he knows. But many times on search and rescues, a dog will walk, let's say down a road, and it'll stop abruptly. And if it's on a roadway, that usually means that the person that it was tracking was picked up. And if it's on a roadway, probably a car, motorcycle, something like that. So if they said that, I tend to believe it. And once you're picked up in a car, anything can happen. Anything. So, for what that's worth. Next letter. Hey Dave, I've followed your research for a number of years now. Own some of your books, bought your movies, a baseball cap, Bigfoot patches, and enjoy every single YouTube video you put out. I'm a huge fan. I'm humbled that anybody watches me. And to support me like you did, thank you. My heart goes out to you every time since you've lost Ben, and I feel your pain so much when you speak. I want to share my own life experiences. It may or may not help you. I just know if someone had reached out to me when I went through what I did, it would have helped me so much. It's a different view, I guess, but our world is full of so many experiences. I hope in some small way it offers some help. This world causes us so much pain, and at the same time shifts our spiritual perception to greater heights. My life has been scarred with many a traumatic experience. When I was 16, I was raped by a much older man. Thankfully, I don't remember the event. My soul went somewhere else. It's the only way I can express what happened when I think back to that moment in time. All my mind sees is a black, actual black. I think my soul protected itself against the memory, but even so, that moment made my life spiral down a very dark road. I felt so terrified of life, but also I didn't care if I lived or died. In fact, I hoped I would have died. My mother didn't want to know when I tried to tell her. I didn't understand at the time. But I think she just was not equipped mentally to help me. However, that didn't help, and I felt if I was alone in the world that God nor my parents cared enough about me or loved me, so therefore I didn't care about or love myself. From that point in time, I went through lots of very bad relationships. Even got married to a very bad man, which was almost what broke me. I divorced him. That in itself was a very stressful experience. At the end of all this, I was in my late 30s. I felt numb. I had no emotion, no soul. Thankfully for my husband of today, who I've been with now for 9 years, saved me. He really did. It still does to this day. I also want to bring up what else saved me. I don't know what imagination really is in that big question. What's consciousness? But my imagination saved me and still does in this trauma-based world at my darkest moments. I would turn it into poetry or art or stories. I imagine I was in a better world. I sew, draw, write. It all helps me understand what life is about. I found my connection to what I call the Great Spirit, or God, through my imagination. And as I realized that many things that come into my mind are gifts from the Great Spirit. Where else would they come from? The Sufis speak of jinn, which many people have wrong impression of. To the Sufis, there are 4 realms, or dimensions. There is God consciousness, which is everything including the 3 other dimensions, the angelic realm, the jinn realm, and the earth realm. And each realm has some interaction with each other, the jinn being the closest to our material nature. The jinn are fascinated with art, creating music, and Sufis say that those who are touched in those very creative aspects have jinn ancestry. Those who are very spiritual have angelic ancestry. What this means is that when the soul, which Sufis call a being in itself, comes to the earth's dimension, it passes through these other dimensions, angelic and jinn, and may stay there for a time, until it decides to move on to earth's dimensions. I think it's why some souls feel very out of place here on earth. If you ever want a great book to read and takes us into the world of the Sufi, it's Journey of the Soul by Hazrat Khan. It helps me through my stressful times. So I believe the jinn actually helped me in this world through gifts of imagination. I have had some fairly interesting experiences in my life. When I was a child of 6, I saw a very small man, maybe 8 inches tall, dancing and playing the flute in my bedroom. When I told my brother to look, the man disappeared. I also had a memory of being a fighter pilot in the Second World War who also died in a plane crash, and I owned a border collie dog. I can still see the images in my mind, but mostly the knowing has gone. I used to talk about it at the dinner table when I was little. Just 2 examples of the very strange things I have had in my life that the memory of have helped me get through life, because I know there is a deeper meaning behind it all. Maybe too large for us to truly understand why we are here. At the grand old age of 45, I feel I've finally found a place within me that is the soul I was always meant to have back. Even though this world does cause me much anxiety, which I trace back to the rape, I have a steadfast belief. No, it's actually a real knowing of the Great Spirit guides us through every experience. And that if we can truly understand the world and our destiny for being here, we can cope with even the most painful of times. I know I did, and still do. I've never been afraid of dying. Living scares me far more, which is something that I'm still working on. When I look back on my life, I see all the strange things that have happened to me. People I met, places I've been, things I have learned. And all that were built upon the person I am today. Even though the world scares me, I am prepared to see my destiny through. And there you go. Don't pull a plug. Don't kill yourself. You may have things in front of you in life that you have no idea that may be the best. We all have a reason to be here, and a time when we no longer need to be here. It's part of the greater movement of the Great Spirit that we can only get glimpses of now and then. Dark and light are one. They cannot exist without the other. What we feel are dark or bad experiences are actually the experiences that break our hearts, so we can let more light in for ourselves, but to also help others. You are a healer, David. It may not feel like it, but through your sharing of your pain with losing Ben, you've helped so many people. Not just those who have lost a loved one, but also those of us who struggle in the world and can feel very alone in it, with no one to express our inner world to. You not only uncover the strangeness with the missing people, you're bringing us to uncovering our souls by connecting with us at such a vulnerable level. You're loved, David. So loved. In this realm and in the realms beyond. Ben's with you. I know he is. I'm sure sometimes you feel that. When I heard your Miss Bob Bigelow story, I got goosebumps. It was all meant to be. It all happens for reasons we can never see until time is unfolded. Anyway, I wanted to share with you, 45 years old, I've made peace with my past trauma. I guess that's what pains me. And heartbreak, we never forget, but we make peace with it and let it rest. Enthusiasm for getting to the truth of things inspires me. Thank you always. You're a shining light in this world. I tell you what, folks, don't feel like it sometimes. I really don't. Sometimes I'm like everybody else. I feel like I'm upstream, swimming upstream and not getting anywhere. The current keeps pushing me back. A lot of people say, well, turn around and just go with the flow. You know, part of me just tells Dave, I wasn't put here to do that. I don't want to ruffle any feathers. I don't want to say anything inappropriate. And I don't want to get anybody mad. But I do think that what has been put in front of us was meant for us to explore. Hug half a tree. Oh, dogs are great. Okay, so let's talk about a case. A very strange case. Hey, what are you doing? You just woke yourself up. Shh, hey, shh, shh, shh. It's okay. Shh, shh, shh. Don't be nervous. Shh. It's a good girl. Shh. See, there's thousands of people out here watching, and you're kind of disrupting the show. She goes, I don't care, Dad. So this is going to give you a little insight into what I look for on cases. I came across this not too long ago, and I call it suspicious, and it's out of British Columbia. A man named Ted Johnson, unknown age. I better let her go out before she gets mad. Okay, there you go. Oh boy. Ted Johnson. No age given, but he was a student at University of British Columbia in Vancouver. Probably somewhere between 18 and 22. Went missing September 25th, 1964 in an area near Ivermere, British Columbia. And he gave everyone a notification that he'd be back within just a couple days. He didn't get back. And what happened is search parties went out to get him, look for him. And 2 weeks later, they found him at the bottom of a cliff with a dead goat at the bottom of the cliff. They never said that there was a bullet round in the goat, but he was goat hunting. Well, that's pretty odd, hey, Dave? Yeah, I think that's pretty odd. Oh, but hold your taters. So, Ted disappeared on September 25th. 1 day later, a man named Rudy Muschket, unknown age, went missing on September 26th, 1964, also in eastern British Columbia. Now, he was also goat hunting, and he failed to come home when he said on September 28th. Now, where did all this happen, you ask? Well, that's a very good question. So, the first case happened up near Prince George, and the other case happened near Ivermere. So, Ted Johnson, the first case, Ivermere, down here in the mountains, right near there. And this case, the case involving Rudy Muschket, disappeared on Dome Mountain, which is down in this area right here. So, the distance here is from Prince George to Ivermere, so you can cut off probably an hour worth of drive, so it's about 7 hours and probably about 648 kilometers. All eastern British Columbia. Now, why would Dave want to focus on these cases? Well, that's a very good question. If you haven't figured it out yet, hold on. Number one, they're both goat hunters. Number two, they disappear one day apart from each other. Number three, they're several hundred miles apart. Number four, they both fell from a cliff, supposedly. 5, they're both alone. 6, they're deceased. And 7, there's few answers about what happened to these men. Out of all my time doing this type of work, this is the first time I've ever heard of goat hunters falling off a cliff in back-to-back days anywhere in the world. I think it's pretty odd. And I call the case suspicious. I've told many of you before that many of these people appear to be placed where they're at or dropped. And if you're going to drop somebody and you didn't care if they broke their back, legs, neck, well, drop them off the side of a mountain. It'll look like they fell. Well, Dave, that's kind of brutal. I'm just saying. Now, if we drop them in the middle of a field, like they do with cattle mutilations, well, there's going to be a bunch of broken bones and a mess, but, oh, wait a minute, there's already a mess because it's a cattle mutilation. That's right. So, I don't know what happened to these goat hunters, but I do think it's suspicious. Now, the next story is even a more complex story with a lot more intrigue, I think. Case involves a man named Ben Egan. And Ben was 41 years old. He went missing on November 4th, 1902 in Belton, Montana. Anybody know where that is? Without looking it up? Raise your hand. He was married, had 5 children, 6 to 15. He was superintendent of the Montana Division of the Great Northern Railroad. Quite a job. Quite a job, and a very respectable one at that. And that was based out of Whitefish. So, he was originally from St. Paul, Minnesota. He'd been around railroads since he was 18 years old. It was like he was groomed for this. He was first what's called a call boy. Then he was a telegraph operator. Then he was a night operator. Then he was a foreman. Then he was what's called an assistant roadmaster, and then assistant superintendent, and then superintendent of Montana Railroad of Great Northern. And Ben's brother, John, was president of the Central Georgia Railroad. So this family was steeped in railroad history. So Ben spent most of his week in Whitefish. He had a railroad car that was his. And then he would drive home on the weekends and spend time with his family in Spokane. Made a lot of friends in the 3 months he was in Whitefish. One of his best friends was the railroad physician, Dr. H.E. Houston, who was out of Whitefish. On November 3rd, the group decided they were going to go bear hunting. Yeah, there's a lot of big bear out here. Big bear. So they decided to get their group together. It was November 3rd, 1902. And Dr. Houston and Ben and 3 others get together. They get into Ben's railroad car, and they go up and they travel eastbound on the rail line, and they get pulled to an area that is best described as the Lake 5 Resort. I know this area very well. Now, Lake 5 is kind of between Whitefish and what is now Glacier National Park. Back in 1902, the area must have been extremely wild. It's still wild enough back there, it scares me at times. Always carry a big gun in there. 7 years ago, a off-duty police officer for the U.S. Forest Service got mauled and killed in this area. So yeah, it's dangerous. So the men get in the car, they take it up to the area near Lake 5, they get out, and Dr. Houston and Ben get out a compass. And Dr. Houston said he just wanted to make sure Ben knew the way to where he was telling his car to go. He told the locomotive to pull the car up the tracks a ways, and they would meet him that night. So Ben got out the compass, held it, and doctors and him looked at it, and he goes, yeah, well, that's eastbound. This is where we're going to go. This is where we're going to meet the car, and we'll just work our way up on both sides of the track and hunt. They said, yep. Doctor said, yep, that sounds like a good plan. They agreed on the coordinates, and right then on the side of the tracks, they decided to split up and hunt different areas. Well, they agreed to meet the night of November 4th at the railroad car. And Ben didn't get there, but everyone else did. So the men in Ben's group searched through the night, and then the next morning they called the assistant superintendent in Whitefish and said, the superintendent's missing, we need help. And immediately the superintendent got together and gathered 50 men and was at the rail car within hours with 50 men searching. Well, the night Ben disappeared, it started snowing, and it snowed through the following night, a couple feet of snow on the ground. Some of the 50 men that were brought in were very well acquainted with the area. They were long-time hunters, rugged guys, knew the area like the back of their hand. They figured that they were going to find Ben very quickly. They didn't find anything. So November 5th comes around. Still nothing's found. November 6th comes around. Still not found. Now they've got 100 searchers out there and pushing towards 200. The president of Great Northern Railroad now sent a train out with 100 more men to search. Some people believed that the disappearance was so odd in that area that Ben had encountered some type of bandit or criminal activity because it was so strange. But they really didn't know. They didn't have anything to go on. So Dr. Houston reported to the search and rescue coordinator that they had last seen Ben near Half Moon Lake on the north side. Well, that was the area that some searchers found a dead deer that search day. Figured it had been dead for maybe a couple days. So they thought they were in the right area. Well, Great Northern on the 9th of November, when they still hadn't found anything, offered a $500 reward for anyone who found Ben. Snow was still about 2 feet deep. November 10th, Ben's brother, A.H. Egan, a third brother, arrived from the East Coast. And subsequently, the reward was raised to $1,000. Dr. Houston described to people how Ben was dressed. Said he was wearing an extremely warm coat with a vest, with undergarments. Coat was oiled, pants were oiled, boots were very warm. The doctor didn't think that hypothermia would be an issue because he was dressed so warmly. He was carrying a rifle and had 30 rounds of ammo. He knew how to use the compass and was considered an astute hunter. One thing that really puzzled people is that he'd been missing now for several days and nobody heard any gunshots. Again, I've stated this many times, and listen carefully. If you're a missing person and you're lost, fire 3 shots off in consecutive order, and that's a sign for help. Wait several hours. Fire off 3 more rounds. Don't move. Stay where you're at. And that gives searchers the ability to hone in on the signal. By now it was November 16th. Search and rescue still considering 200 people are on and around the mountains looking for him. The 17th through the 19th of November, 50 to 75 men rotated daily through the search. And they knew that it could be he could have been nearby and he could have been far, but they concentrated on that first 2 miles around the area he was last seen. Well, on the November 20th, the president of Great Northern Railroad said he believed that there's a great chance that Ben was deceased. So the search went on for 16 days. And friends, for 1902, I've never heard of a search going that long. That is comprehensive. That is dedication. That really tells me that Great Northern went out of their way to make this a successful search. Well, his wife was in the area at this point, and she was devastated, to say the least. On May 20th, 1903, about 6 months after Ben disappeared, snow starts to thin out around here, and Great Northern decides that they're going to have a search and rescue effort to find Ben's body. They started on May 20th. On 6/1, June 1st, 12 days into searching, they find Ben's body. 1.5 miles south of Belton, where he was heading east towards his railroad car, a man named Charles Emmons finds the body. It's just 1 mile from the railroad tracks. 2 miles from the point where he's separated with Dr. Houston. And 1 mile from Half Moon Lake. I'll explain this area to you. So for the people that have been to Whitefish, it's down in this area over here. This is the road that goes to the west entrance of Glacier National Park. This is Glacier right here. Glacier was established in 1910. So at this time, the men could have gone into this area to hunt. But Ben was last seen right in this area, and he was hiking east towards his railway car. And Dr. Houston said he was going that way. Now he's found almost west of where he was last seen, which doesn't make any sense because the doctor said he was last seen heading this way along the tracks. Now, just so you know, this is Lake 5 Resort nowadays. This is Half Moon Bay Lake, and this is where he was last seen on the north side of the lake. Body found. Now, the body being found was just part of it. Now, understand this. He's found laying on his stomach with his right hand under his breast. His left hand is under his shoulder. His legs are laying close together with his left leg over his right leg. The doctor at the scene examined the whole body. They actually took all the clothes off before they put him on the horse. They examined him for wounds, and there were none. Remember that. There were no wounds. So they come back to Whitefish and they have a jury. And on death cases, it's pretty common to have these jury verdicts where they get given all the evidence. And the jury verdict is that Ben fell, hit his head, was unconscious, and died of hypothermia. Many problems with that. He had no injuries to his head. He had no injuries to his body. But let me give this to you again. So this is the middle fork of the Whitehead, or the Flathead River. I've filmed on this many times before. But there's also two lakes right here. His body's found right over here. Very close proximity to a lot of different types of water. He was in an area that was previously searched probably 20 times, at least once a day for all the days he was missing. He was a hunter, and he was in a cluster zone. Yeah, this is a cluster zone. Now, at the beginning they said, well, we probably wouldn't be able to find the body because it was covered in snow. 2 feet of snow. 2 feet, everyone knows how much 2 feet is. So if you were laying flat on the ground, possible to miss the body, but there would still be contours to the ground. But this case was different. Ben was laying with his head resting on a log. That's a different kind of view. So, what do I think happened here? I have no idea. But it doesn't make any sense to me. It doesn't make any sense for the amount of searching that was done. No injury to the body. They said he must have froze to death, but they didn't know. What happened to Ben Egan? Now here's a really, really strange part of the story. They were bear hunting. Folks, there's some big bear out there. Now there are bear out there up to 1,200 pounds. But back in 1902, there must have been a ton of bear. And into November, they started thinking about going into hibernation because there's not a lot of food. So they were out bear hunting, probably one of the last weekends of the year. Why wasn't there any bear predation to the body? Bears are really hungry before they go into hibernation. There isn't a lot of food. And you got a dead body laying there? I don't understand that. I don't understand it at all. Bears have a nose that is one of the best for sniffing out anything. And to think that they didn't sniff out Ben's body doesn't make any sense to me. So, there's your cases for today. You do me a huge favor by passing this around. And no, that story I just gave you is not in the Montana book. We found that within the last 6 months after the Montana book came out. So maybe in the updated version it will be. But I appreciate you being here. I appreciate you being patient with me as we work our way through some interesting times in the next couple months. And now you know that I have been working very hard for the last 3 years to bring something very special to you. And please look back under the links of this video and you'll see what I'm talking about if you don't know already. In the meantime, be nice to your loved ones, take care of your family, do something special for someone in your community, and I gotta go out right now and be nice to Huck because she's all mad at me because I didn't pay attention to her because I was paying attention to you. Anyhow, Paulides out.